Hi everybody, this is Gabby and I'm back for another story. Today I will be sharing a story that maybe it's good that I include a trigger warning because this story is about when a man became obsessed with me when I was in college. Not in a romantic way, actually in the psycho way, and it was not fun for me, not a good experience at the time ever. I think maybe this will help anybody who's watching this who maybe have gone through this or is going through this. Maybe this will give you the strength to speak up and seek help. So let me start. So my story begins when I'm in college. This was my very first year and I was very young. I was new in town. I was going to college abroad in a different country. I was in the US. You know, this was the first year, but the second semester of the first year. So by then I had already made a few friends, really good friends, lots of them from other countries who were studying also in the US for a year or two, or just doing some type of exchange program. So I had lots of good friends from the US, but also from other countries. It was such a wonderful experience. And even though I seem to have experienced lots of crazy moments throughout my college years, I think overall, you know, I have lots of good memories, lots of good moments that I still cherish and remember with very much, you know, happiness and just love. But this particular story happened quite early during my stay in the US. I was living there in an apartment by myself. Like I said, I was new in town, so I wasn't really close to any family members. The closest family member that I had in the US lived all the way across the country. He was living in California. He lives in California. He resides there. He's my uncle. And, you know, that was the closest family member I had in the whole country. So I was pretty much alone. My parents had helped me, of course, find my apartment, and they would visit me every now and then, but it wasn't often. So I was mainly living alone in the city. So this event happened, as I said, in the second semester of my first year. And I had built a routine. I'm a routine kind of girl, so I kind of had built a routine around my schedule. I remember I had 4 classes that I had, you know, I started in the morning. I had a gap. I still remember in the morning, like I had a 7 a.m. class all the way till I think 8 something. And then I had a gap between 9 to like 10 to begin my next class and so on. So during that gap, I would go to this specific building because in the first floor, there were a bunch of, you know, it was a sitting area with the coziest, you know, sofas they had on campus. And there was a vending machine. Actually, there were many vending machines. One of them had coffee, the other one had drinks, and the other ones had snacks. So overall, it was just a good place for me to spend my gap, you know, hour while studying or doing homework. So of course, you know, as I said, I loved my routine. So every morning I would go to class, get out of class, go to this area, and even sit in the very same place every single time. I was lucky enough that at that hour, it was always empty. So I would never, you know, I was always able to find my seat empty. So what happened was that, you know, after a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks of doing the same routine, you know, one morning I'm studying for my midterms. And I remember being, you know, having headphones, being very focused on what I was reading. And all of a sudden I noticed this man pulling the chair across, you know, right across from me, pulling the chair and just sitting and looking at me. So I think every girl has this sort of ability to ignore men because we regularly get catcalled and it's not a fun thing. So, you know, I thought it was going to be one of those moments. So I just completely ignored his presence, even though he was pretty, it was pretty obvious that he was there and he was looking at me like this. So I look up, and I obviously knew that I couldn't avoid the moment, so I needed to just be done with it. I take off my headphones and I'm like, can I help you? Because, he kept doing this, which is very rude, by the way. Even at the gym or in any scenario, I think it's very rude to be doing this to somebody who clearly doesn't want to talk. But I thought, why not? Maybe he needs something. Maybe he has a question. I don't know. So I say, can I help you? And he says, what's your name? And I knew where this was going. So I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm actually studying. This is really important, so I have no time to chat. And he responds, oh, come on. There's always time to chat. There's always time to make friends. So why don't you tell me your name? I look at him again and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm really busy. Put my headphones again. And you would think that he would be gone. I'm looking at my book and he's still there. And then he goes like this. And he goes like, let me show you something on my phone. It's actually quite funny because I took off my headphones. And I'm like, I do this. And I'm like, hey, I'm really busy. And he's like, that's okay. You know what? I just want to introduce myself. My name is Ivan. I still remember his name. My name is Ivan. I've been watching you. Red flag. I've been watching you every single day or every other day. I didn't have class every day at that area, it was like every other day. I think it was like Mondays, Wednesdays, and that was my routine. No, actually, I think it was like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Yeah, so every other day. And so he goes like, I've been watching you. I noticed you do the same thing. You come here, you sit here, you get your coffee, and you just do your homework. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, oh, I just thought you were really cute and maybe we should become friends. And you know what, I'm new here at the school. I recently I can't remember if he said he quit or if he had finished his program or something at the Marines. He was like a Marine, a soldier, and he wanted to pursue a career, so he just had enrolled and he was taking classes. He started telling me his life within the first 15 minutes, and I'm looking at him like, read my face, I don't care. So I'm like, wow, that's interesting. He's forcing the conversation, and I'm like, sometimes people will ask you, why are you engaging or why are you being nice to somebody who's catcalling you, harassing you? And I think I've seen comments like that on social media, and I think you really need to be in the moment and be in the body of a female, especially young woman who doesn't know how to react to that moment, or maybe is intimidated or doesn't want to make a scene, or there are just so many reasons why women sometimes will just, not react the way you would want ideally to moments like this. I think the Gaby now will definitely react differently to the Gaby before, So I kept engaging, and I was like, I was trying to be nice, polite. I would be like, that's cool. That's really cool. And he would say, what are you studying? I'm like, well, I'm studying right now business. That's what I think I want. I'm not sure. And I'm just answering vague questions. He's like, well, I'm doing this and that. He's just telling me his whole life. So by then, 30 minutes had passed and I was so done. So I get up and I'm like, well, it was nice talking to you, but I'm gonna go to class, so bye. He gets up as I'm getting up, and I look at him. He's like, I'll walk you to your class. And I'm like, that's not necessary. Grab my backpack, grab my book, and I'm like, well, bye. He's like, no, I'll walk you to your class. And I look at him and I'm like, that's not really necessary. I can walk myself to class. And at this point, a lot of people are getting out of class because they're like, I guess there was a class that was over or something. So there were a bunch of people coming through, and And so I took advantage of that. I started moving fast and I started walking, through a hallway. And there's like these glass doors that were opening as I was passing through, one of those like sliding doors. And through the glass, I see a shadow behind me, and I knew it was him. I turn around and I look at him and I'm like, are you following me? And he says, no, I'm actually walking you to your class. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. Please stop. Oh, come on. And I'm like, I'm actually going to the bathroom. I go inside there happened to be like a bathroom within the next 10 steps. So I go inside the bathroom, and I kid you not, I stayed there for like 15 minutes. I know, because I was looking at my phone. And I sit in the toilet and I'm like, I'm not even doing anything. I'm just sitting there and I'm waiting. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, maybe I should kill time. He'll get tired. He has to have a life, so he'll eventually move on. So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I'm listening to all the girls' dramas, because they're all, talking in the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. And finally, after 15 minutes, I get out. And of course, some people were looking at me like, what were you doing there for so long? So I didn't care. It was like a fight or flight kind of thing. So I get out of the bathroom, and I don't see anything. The first thing I see is just other people, talking. So I get out to start walking towards, the exit. And as I'm getting out, as I'm, walking, he says, that took you long. And I turn around and he's there. And I'm like, F my life. And at that point, I think I should have done something. I should have said something. Like I said, me, the Gaby that I am now, older and with a much more, I think, what can I say? How can I say this? Like, the strength to do something, with that strength, having that strength to do something or say something, I think I would have reacted way differently and literally make a scene. But at that moment, I was very naive. I was shy. I was new. I was just like experiencing my college life. So I was pretty much afraid of doing something or saying something, So I start walking to the exit, and I'm looking around, looking for security guards. There's nobody to be found. And I had to cross actually the street to go to the next building. So I'm walking, and he's like, oh, come on, you look a little bit tense. What's wrong? And I'm like, well, you're making it weird for me, because I said I don't need to be walked. We're not friends, and you're still following me. But I want to be friends with you. We're friends, right? I'm cool. I'm a cool guy. So at this point, I'm crossing the street, and he's following me, and he's grabbing my backpack off of me, like trying to pull it. And I'm like, please stop. Like, I have a thing for personal space, so don't do that. He's like, all right, you know what? He said something between the lines of like, I'll stop being weird. Like, I don't want to scare you out. I actually want to be friends. So I'll let you go to your class. Have a good day. I'll see you around. And I'm like, yeah, see you around. Turn around. And like, I never walked faster. So I get to my class, continue with my day, and everything goes fine. The next day, I, finish class in the morning and completely forgot about this guy. For some reason, I was like preoccupied with something that had happened, or with, some drama with my friends, whatever. So I completely forgot. So I go to class, follow my usual routine, and I go sit down at this place, and this guy is there. But this time I got lucky, because I think my friends came over, like somebody interrupted me, and I'm like, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. He came to the seat, and he was like, oh, you're here again, and I was trying not to engage, but somebody came talk to me. So I kind of like acted as if I was, busy. So the guy goes, and he's like, well, I'll see you some other time, and he leaves. So I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. That's awesome. He's leaving me alone. Right? And so I didn't think any of it. I actually thought that that was over. So the next day, well, the next class, which was, say, Friday, I go back to the same spot and he's there already waiting for me. And I'm like, I cannot escape. I can turn around. He's like, hey, how are you? You know, trying to make small conversation. So at that point, I'm like, hey, what's up? You know, acting cool and like, and, you know, showing my lack of interest. So I tried to sit in another area and I'm like, and he goes like, so how was your week? Do you have social media at this point? I don't think I even had an Instagram. I only had Facebook. He was like, can I get your number? Like, no, I'm sorry. I don't give my number to strangers. He's like, well, do you have a Facebook? I'm like, I don't have a Facebook. Do you have Instagram? No, I don't have Instagram. And the girls next to me were laughing because they thought this girl really thinks she's something, you know, like she's playing hard to get. And I don't think they realized I was trying to avoid, you know, giving my contact to somebody I didn't want to. So he just keeps insisting, and then he goes to the vending machine, gets like some type of snack, and he goes like, well, you know, maybe we'll have to do this old school, you know, maybe I'll have to approach you every single time. And that sort of freaked me up a little bit, you know. And he's like, well, we'll become friends, okay? And I'm like, okay, you know. He leaves eating his snack and I put on my headphones and I'm studying, but I'm clearly bothered. And these girls next to me are laughing as if I'm like, as if I was the stupid one, you know. And then something happened. I go home, and during that weekend, my grandmother over here in Peru got sick, and it happened really fast. They took her to the hospital. She needed emergency surgery, went through surgery, and unfortunately her heart couldn't take it. She had a heart attack post-surgery and passed away. So I was alone in Miami when I got the news, and that hit me so hard. And I remember, you know, just wanting to immediately fly home and be with her, you know, and be with my family. But it was crazy how things happened. I don't know, you know, I was trying to buy tickets, like, you know, airplane tickets, and for some reason I couldn't find affordable tickets. Like everything was just like so expensive. I'm talking like, I don't know why. I think it was like maybe what do you call it, high season or something here in Peru. I don't know, but tickets were over $1,000 and I could not afford that. So, and on top of that, I still had school, and I mentioned in a previous video, you know, how if you're an international student and you're studying, you pretty much have to stick to what you're signing up for legally. You know, you can't just quit school like that. So my mom was like, you know, she's gone anyway, you know, just stay there. I think it's better for you. Right now, everybody's a mess. I'm a mess. You know, my mom, poor her soul, you know, bless her soul. She was devastated, and thank God my aunts and uncles and cousins and my sister were here to really give each other love. But I was alone. So I think that was one of the reasons why I started becoming depressed. That was one of my, I think, triggers. I've mentioned many things that caused my depression when I was younger, but that was one of them. I felt like I had lost such an important part of my life, and I couldn't be here to say goodbye. So that whole week, and I think the next couple of weeks, it must have been two, actually yes, because I had to email all my professors and my advisors and ask for permission to be absent and take classes online, even though I couldn't. I had to be actually an in-person student, but I asked to be, you know, online for at least 2 weeks because of my loss. Thank goodness everybody understood. My professors were angels. Everybody was so nice. My friends were so nice. They would bring me food. They were just so loving, you know, for what they could do. It was just like enough, you know. I isolated myself a lot. It was a horrible, horrible time in my life, you know, to deal with that loss by myself without saying really goodbye. You know, the last time I had seen my grandmother was months prior, happy, you know, and we thought that we would see each other again. We made plans to see each other again. And I don't know, it just hit me so hard. It definitely was one of the catalysts to my depression. And so I was absent. I didn't go to school for two weeks. And then I realized that I couldn't no longer stay home with my thoughts, with my loneliness. And I thought, you know what, I need to go to school. So I started going to school. I go back to, you know, in-person class. And by then I had completely erased this guy off my memory because I was preoccupied mourning the loss of my grandmother. So I go back to my regular routine, go back to going to school, taking class, going to my areas, my favorite spots, my favorite areas in the whole campus, you know. And I kid you not, the very first day that I go to class, I go sit in my very favorite spot and I'm reading a book. And this time there was a security guard. Thank God. Because this guy pops out of nowhere, pulls the chair and says, "Where the hell have you been?" With such authority, as if I owed him information of any kind. And I look up and he looks at me, he's like, "Where have you been? I thought we were friends. I thought, you know, what, have you been avoiding me?" You know? And I look at him in disbelief because I had completely forgotten about him. So when I saw him, everything came back and I'm like, oh shit, this guy. So I look at him and I'm like, why would I have to give you an explanation? You know? And he's like, well, why don't you tell me? Where have you been? You know? What have you been up to? Have you been avoiding me? Did I come off too strong for you? And I'm looking at him and I just want to punch this guy, you know? Thank goodness security guard, I think, picks up on his behavior and he comes and says, "Is this guy bothering you? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. He's actually, I don't know him." He's like, "What do you mean you don't know me? We're friends." And to me, that was already too much. You know, he was looking, he had these eyes like he was definitely on something, or he was just like nuts. So I said, you know what? I don't have to listen to this. I don't know this guy. He's not my friend. Grab my backpack and I'm leaving. He's like, "Oh, come on. I thought we were going to chat. Come on." And he just starts getting up. Thank God the security said like, "Hey, let her go or I'll have to like stop you and get you arrested." And I listened to that and I started walking fast. Oh my gosh. This was, I think I should have seen in that moment what was going to come after because of the way he was reacting, you know, like it was definitely, I brushed it off like, you know, like it will go away. But then again, you know, I was not in my right mindset, I guess. So the next day passes, the next one passes, and I think a few days pass. And by then, you know, I was still mourning the loss of my grandmother, but I was also worried about what had happened. I was, you know, I don't know, it was like something in me was telling me that it was not over. So one morning I'm going to class and by then I was already nervous. You know, I would walk on campus looking to the side and just I was starting to limit myself to certain areas, you know. So I go to class, to the next class that I had, the one that started at like 10 something. I go to class and I'm talking to my classmate. We're talking about whatever. And she had like really short hair. So I was complimenting her on her haircut. And she's talking to me, but she's also looking up like this. And I go like, "What are you looking at?" I turn around and this man is standing like this, looking at me as if, I don't know, I don't even know why would he do that, but he was just standing there. And I look at him and I'm like, I can still feel that, you know? And mind you, this is the beginning of the class. So a bunch of students are coming in and the professor comes through the door. He's like, morning class, and everybody's like, morning, you know? And he's dropping the book and he looks at him, you know? And says, sir, please take a seat. We're going to begin class. And he's just looking at me. And I look at my friend and I don't know why I couldn't pronounce anything. I wanted to say help. I wanted to scream in the whole class, you know, that I needed help, but I didn't. I looked at my professor. I looked at him. I didn't even say anything. I think I just said, like, what are you doing? And he just kept looking at me, like, expecting I don't know what. And the professor got angry. He's like, are you going to have a seat or am I going to have to ask you to get out? Please, today we have a long day. Well, he said something along the lines of, we have a busy day. He looked at the professor and got out. And he looked at me. He's like, you good? Do you know him? You want to go with your friend? And I'm like, I'm fine. You know, I just said something like, it's good. And my friend kept looking at me and she knew something was wrong. At the end of the class, I said, you know what? I don't know that guy. He's following me. And she said, you need to call the police. You need to tell somebody. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. What do you even do in these cases, you know? And then she told me, you know what, go home, call me and let me know if you need anything. And I was like, okay, fine. I go home that day and I'm in my apartment doing my homework. And every afternoon I would go for a run. There was like a big avenue by the water that would overlook the city. And it was just a beautiful place to go for runs. So every afternoon around like maybe 3, 4, when the sunset was starting to, you know, peak, I would go for runs and it was just wonderful. So that day I go for a run and as I'm going back home, I'm walking through, you know, it was like a busy street, big avenue. I'm walking and I sense that a car is following me. And I look to the side and all I see is a truck. It was gray. I see the guy and I recognize him. It was him. And he was driving slow as I was walking. You know, as I was walking on the sidewalk, he was driving slow and looking at me. My heart started pounding really fast. So fast, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. All I did was start running. And I started running as fast as I could. And I was 2 blocks away from home. And thank God I lived in a residential area where everything was gated and there were security guards always at the entrance. And I was friends with them because they were so nice. They were always so nice to me. So I started running as if I'm, you know, running for my life. And the car starts also like speeding up. But I didn't care. I wasn't even looking at him. I was just like running. I reached the corner, turn left. I go into, you know, the building. And as soon as I see the security guards, I pass the gate because there, you know, everything was gated for cars, but the gate for people to pass by, to walk through, it was open. So I run past it and run immediately to the little, you know, what do you call the place where all the security guards hang at the entrance. I run inside and I think I finally was producing words, you know, and I start screaming, help, 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 help. And I start screaming and crying and I immediately turn into this like, you know, hysterical person. And they all look at me and they're like, what's wrong? What's happening? You know, there were like 4 of them. They were all, I think there was like a switch of shifts. So there were a lot of security guards and they're like, what is going on? I knew half of them. And I'm like, please help me. Somebody's following me. He's been stalking me. I have a stalker. He's here. He just passed by it. I just like was vomiting words, you know. And they were like, thank God they were such good security guards that immediately they started like two of them like run out. They tried to like maybe catch something, and they were like, don't worry, there are security cameras. What does he look like? What is this like? I told him everything. I told, like, it was me with like 6 guys. I don't even know how many. There were like a lot of security guards that came to help, and they were like looking at me like not knowing what to do, you know, because I was like shaking. And of course, you know, this is when I actually started really developing this anxiety episode, or not anxiety. Anxiety in general is when you have anxious moments and you're constantly going through like anxious episodes, you know, where you're like constantly thinking and constantly doing something that are symptoms to your anxiety. But that moment I was having a panic attack. I was like starting to develop those episodes, you know, where I would like start shaking and sweating and like not even being able to verbalize, you know, say what I wanted to say. So I just started shaking, and I was like, help me. And I was, you know, blurting words, and they listened to me. They gave me a hug, and they were like, they took the information they needed from me, and they were like, we can call the police. We can do whatever you want at this moment, you know. But what we promise you is that we will not let anybody. So this building had a policy. So if there were any visitors, they would call the person that would live in the building and to give them a green light. Yes, this person knows me, or I know him or her, you can let them in. So they already had that policy forced. But additionally to that, they, you know, promised me they would never let any visitor in for me, you know. And because I rarely got visits, you know, I isolated myself, so I wasn't really expecting anybody anytime soon. So they told me no one is going in, especially towards your apartment. Nobody here unless has proper, you know, permission to go into the building. You know, they basically made sure that I was being helped. They took his description. I think eventually they found in the cameras the license plate. So they just basically blocked any contact with me through that building, you know. And after, you know, I went into my apartment. I called my uncle, who was on the other side of the country, and he got mad at me. He was like, why didn't you tell me this before? I would have helped you. You need to file, what is it called? Like an order, like a restriction order, I think it's called. You need to call the police. You need to do this. I had so many instructions that I was being overwhelmed. And he told me, I'll come over. And I'm like, well, I think I don't need it right now, but I will let you know if you need to. I don't know. I wasn't really acting smart, I think. Now that I reflect on those moments, I think I could have done a better job at protecting myself. I just was very afraid and like, you know, shy, or, you know, very afraid of making scenes or creating unnecessary drama. You know, I just didn't want to bother anybody or like create anything. You know, I was in that moment, you know, in that mindset. So I was like, well, right now, you know, the people at my apartment, you know, they're gonna block it, you know, try to, you know, like enforce security, you know, like protect me. And you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna go to school and actually go, and there was a place where you can actually, like a police department, you know, office where you could file, you know, or report cases of whatever there may be happening. And so, you know, I promised him to do that. And if it were necessary, I would ask him to fly over. So things calmed down, I think, because he already knew I was starting to speak up and actually say what was happening. So things calmed down for a while. I didn't see him for weeks. I think I was already, by then it was already finals week, and I hadn't seen him. So I thought, you know, I think he got the message, you know, except for one time that I was going to my class and I decided not to go that day. And I stayed in the other, like on a different building. And I was looking, it was like an area where you could see the campus, you know, it's like a balcony. And I was just, you could easily see the path towards my next class. And I saw him like crossing and like looking and just looking for, I'm guessing, me. So during that period, I completely isolated myself. I would cry in the bathrooms. I would limit myself to main areas. I would dress, I remember, like very conservative. It's summertime in Miami. It's hot the entire year. So I would like go with like hoodies, and I was just completely isolating myself, you know, because not just because of that, but also because of my grandmother. So it was very horrible. And my friends got mad at me because I didn't really share with a lot of people what was going on. You know, one of the last days of the semester, I was buying a book and I ran into one of my good friends. Till today, he's a good friend. He's from Brazil. And, you know, I ran into him and he's also buying something and we're chatting. And he goes like, oh, you know what? You know, we're chatting. And then all of a sudden he goes like, there's a guy, but he said it in a playful way, as if it was like a romantic way, you know, in a romantic sense. He was like, there's a guy staring at you. And I immediately go like, what does he look like? And he goes like, oh, he looks like a tough guy, you know, like he works out. He actually looks like a soldier, you know, he has that buzz cut and everything. And I'm like, you should have seen tears started coming down my cheeks, just like, this guy has been stuck. And I told him we were in line to pay, you know, to buy the things we have picked. And I told him everything in like 2 seconds, you know, like this guy has been stalking me. It's been like, blah, blah, blah. He goes like, why didn't you say anything sooner? Why didn't you tell us? You have friends, you're not alone. You have people here. And I'm like, I don't know. I just like, it's, you know, I sort of internalized everything and just like completely went mute and didn't want to bother anybody with my problems. And, you know, it was just horrible, you know. So he caused a scene. He gets out of line, goes towards him. I turn around and yeah, it was him who was standing by the door. He was just looking at me, which was, I cannot even explain the feeling of like being observed, you know. And he goes and grabs him by the shirt and pushes him, and everybody's looking at us, pushes him against the door. And he's like, I've been watching you. You've been watching my friends. My friend, you've been stalking her. Just want you to know that I know who you are. I know what you're doing. And next time I'm actually gonna, you know, if you continue doing this, I don't care. I'm gonna send you to the hospital, he said. And I'm like in shock, of course. I'm like just standing there like the emoji, you know, not being able to like say anything. I would just freeze, you know. And the security guard comes in and he's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, and finally, you know, to defend my friend, I was like, no, this guy is bothering me. He's a stalker, you know. And the security guard is like, why are you bothering them? He's like, no, I'm just cool. I'm just standing here. And my friend was just like very upset. He would like continue holding his shirt and be like, I'm warning you. Next time you're getting arrested, you know. And that, I think, because I don't know what happened, that I gained strength from watching my friend defending me, that I finally addressed him. And I'm like, next time I see you around me, I'm calling the police and I'm, you know, pressing charges. I'm pressing charges against you. You've been stalking me. I saw you at my house. I saw you, you know, in my classes. You got it. I started saying all these things that I kept to myself. I started saying them out loud for the whole library to listen, to the bookstore, you know, the whole bookstore to listen. And everybody was like passing by like, what the hell? And he just stood there and I'm like, I'm not gonna let you ruin this for me. I'm in college. I shouldn't have to hide. I shouldn't have to. I just said everything that was going through my mind. And I told him, I cursed at him. And I was like, I'm sending you to jail if you continue doing this. And, you know, he just listened and he was like, I'm walking away, you know. He walked away, but because the security guard was like ready to call the police, it was like a big scene, you know. For me to share it, it's like, now I'm like more calm, you know, and I'm over this story. But when it happened, it was like the worst, you know. The whole semester was like, I was, you know, so depressed, so sad, so scared for my safety, you know. And for the first time I felt relief. You know, my friend, he did something that gave me so much strength. And I think if there's anything that anybody should learn from this, you know, is one, you know, don't be afraid to speak up, because the more you keep things to yourself, you could be putting yourself more in danger, or, you know, you could just be causing yourself so much emotional, you know, so many emotional problems. Because that was for me, you know, that was adding to my depression. That was like, I would be home crying every day. I would go to school scared of my surroundings. I used to run. I didn't run anymore. I used to like do so many things that I didn't do because I was being intimidated, you know, and harassed. I hope this goes for anybody, men or women, who I obviously hope you never get to experience this, but if you were to experience this, you know, maybe this will help you gain courage to defend yourself and speak up, you know. But at the same time, I hope this helps to anybody who has, especially men who have the privilege to be, I don't know, like, you know, use your privilege of, say, being a man to speak up and actually protect people or defend them, because that could mean saving their lives. You never know who people are, really. And I don't know till this day what he could have done to me if I had continued letting him stalk me and not say anything. Basically, that's what he was doing. He noticed that he had a vulnerable person in front of him who was not saying anything, who was not speaking up or even saying anything to him, who was just going along with the whole thing and just showing vulnerability every time, you know. And he basically found his perfect victim. So I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if things happened the way they did, you know. And I gotta thank people for that, because you know, strangers basically, you know, gave me strength. My friends, the security guards, my friend at school, you know, my uncle, everybody who I happened to share my story to, you know, they actually encouraged me to speak up. So yeah, that's my story. And I know I told it in a very messy way, because when I remember it, it's messy in my brain. And it's messy because it's not just that story, it's also my grandma's passing. So everything is just, I always remember that story like in a very messy way. But yeah, that's how I became, or I got harassed or stalked for a whole semester. Yeah, that was like September, October, November, December. Yeah, it was like 3 months of me, you know, starting a happy person and then, you know, losing my grandmother, meeting this person, and then all of a sudden, you know, I would get up really scared, would like go to the bus stop and really scared, wearing big clothes, you know, hoodies and like baggy pants, and like not talk to anybody, isolate myself, say no to my friends wanting to hang out with me, say no to everything that involved me getting out of my house. I remember spending so much money because I would just get like takeout or order food, because I was too afraid to go grocery shopping or do anything by myself out in the streets. I would go from the bus stop was right outside my building, lucky me. So I would go to the bus stop of my school, run to my class, get out next to my class, to the next class, to get lunch, bus stop, my house. That was my day, every single day. You know, I isolated myself so much that my friends were starting to think I had a problem with them. And they got angry at me when they found out what was happening to me. You know, at school, I would go from class to class, and if I somehow noticed that somebody was following me behind me, or like something would trigger me, I would go to the bathrooms and just cry. And girls would be like, what is wrong with this girl? Why is she crying in the bathrooms? You know, I hated my life so much because I was scared. I was scared. I was walking campus, you know, on campus, scared every single day. I avoided going to classes some days, you know, where there were like, you know, classes, or I knew that we would have like classes that were not so interesting. I would avoid going and just like stay home and review my notes there at home. I just completely changed my life around the fact that I needed to avoid this guy for a whole semester. And I think I'm lucky, because in some other cases, girls don't live to tell this story, or they just have a very different outcome.